Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always fun to dive in.
This time we're looking at Iain McGilchrist's book, The Master and His Emissary.
Okay.
Well, actually, excerpts from a piece
Mm.
about it.
Right.
And it's a book that uses the two hemispheres of the brain as a metaphor
Yeah.
for some pretty big cultural trends.
Okay.
And one of the things that kind of hooked me on this is this idea that our left brain,
Mm.
with its obsession for detail and control,
Right.
may have kind of hijacked our world.
It's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple as just saying that the left brain is bad or anything like that.
Right.
McGilchrist is much more nuanced than that.
Why?
He really is arguing that both hemispheres have their own way of experiencing the world.
So it's not just about the, kind of the classic left brain equals logic, right brain equals creativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about skills. It's about how each of the hemispheres
So,
processes the world. So the left hemisphere is all about categorization, analysis. It wants to break things down into smaller pieces that it can control. Meanwhile, the right hemisphere is about the big picture,
okay,
the context, intuition,
got it.
the meaning.
Okay, so I'm starting to see where this is going.
Yeah.
How does this relate to this idea of the left brain kind of staging a coup?
Well, he argues that the right hemisphere is what he calls the master.
Okay.
It's the one that should be in charge.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
the one that sees the whole picture, provides the meaning.
Right.
And the left hemisphere is what he calls the emissary.
Okay.
And that is supposed to serve the master.
Mm-hmm.
But in the modern world, he's saying that the emissary has become dominant.
Okay.
You can think about it like a trusted advisor
Right.
who has kind of usurped the throne.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the excerpt also mentions something called reductionism. What is that exactly in this context?
So imagine if you only valued things that could be measured.
Okay.
So suddenly things like beauty and love and,
Right.
the meaning of life become less important because they don't fit neatly into a spreadsheet.
Right.
That's reductionism.
Okay. And I'm guessing this also kind of impacts how we view nature.
Oh, absolutely.
And this.
We start to see nature as something to be exploited, a collection of resources,
Yeah.
rather than a complex web of life that we're actually part of.
Right.
He points to standardized testing in education as another example of this.
Interesting.
That it prioritizes these measurable outcomes over genuine understanding.
Yeah, this is starting to feel a little too close to home.
Yeah.
Have we all just become slaves to our left hemispheres?
Well, that's a great question. I think,
Okay.
I think McGilchrist certainly seems to think that Western civilization is really showing the symptoms of this imbalance.
Yeah.
The question is it truly threatening our planet and mental health?
Right.
Or is that a little bit too dramatic?
That's what I'm hoping we can unpack.
Yeah.
So tell me about this master and emissary metaphor.
Okay.
And is this imbalance as dire as he suggests?
Well, this metaphor of the master and the emissary is really central to his argument.
Okay.
The right hemisphere being the wise ruler,
Mm-hmm.
the left hemisphere being this trusted lieutenant who's gone rogue.
Right.
He even traces this dynamic through history.
Okay.
He links it to the rise of industrialization
Stop,
and
yeah.
bureaucracy.
Okay, hold on. We're about to jump into a whole history lesson here. But
Yeah.
before we do,
Yeah.
let's connect this back to the listeners.
Mhm.
How does this left brain dominance
Yeah,
show up in their everyday lives?
right,
I mean, we all feel this pressure to be productive.
right. Well, think about how often, you feel like you should be doing something productive instead of just enjoying a moment of peace.
Right.
That's your left hemisphere kind of whispering in your ear.
Yeah.
And it can also affect our relationships too. Are we really connecting with people or just going through the motions?
So it's not just some, abstract philosophical idea.
Right.
It's affecting us on a very personal level every day.
Exactly.
But McGilchrist doesn't just leave us with this kind of bleak diagnosis, does he?
Right.
What does he suggest we do about this?
Well, he doesn't offer a simple fix,
Right.
but he does suggest ways that we can restore this harmony,
Okay.
both personally and as a society.
Okay, so let's start with the personal.
Okay.
What can we do as individuals to kind of rebalance our brains
Yeah.
amidst all the chaos of modern life?
One of the keys is to engage with experiences that kind of nurture that right hemisphere. So
Okay.
things like art, music,
Right.
spending time in nature.
Yeah.
These are all things that kind of engage our senses and emotions.
It's like we're kind of hitting the reset button
Yeah.
and allowing the master to kind of remind us what really matters. And it's interesting because those are often the things that we sacrifice when we feel that pressure to be productive.
Yeah, the left hemisphere sees them as unimportant,
Right.
but they're really crucial for cultivating a sense of wonder
Yeah.
and connection to the world around us.
So it's not just about, taking a break. It's about
Yeah,
engaging with things that speak to a different part of ourselves.
right.
So what else does he recommend?
He also talks about the importance of empathy,
Okay.
really paying attention to other people,
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand their perspective,
Yeah.
not just their words.
In a world that's constantly pushing us to focus on ourselves and our own goals,
Right.
that can be a real challenge.
That's exactly the disconnect that he's warning against,
Right.
that a left-brain-dominated society really struggles with empathy, which leads to isolation,
Right.
then a breakdown of community.
So we need to reconnect with ourselves and with other
Yeah.
people. This is making me think about this whole productivity obsession that the excerpt mentioned.
Right.
Is it even possible to ditch that in today's world?
Well, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think his point is that we need to question this assumption
Okay.
that our worth is tied to how much we produce.
Okay.
He suggests focusing on experiences rather than accomplishments.
Okay, so instead of measuring my day by how many things I crossed off my to-do list,
Right.
I should be asking what moments brought me joy,
Exactly.
what made me feel connected.
It's about valuing the quality of our experience
Right.
over the quantity of our output.
So it's a subtle but profound shift.
It is.
All right, so this is all great for us as individuals, but what about on a societal level?
Yeah.
How do we start to kind of shift this balance on a larger scale?
Well, he doesn't offer like a detailed blueprint or anything,
Okay.
but he does highlight some areas where fundamental change is needed.
Okay.
For example, he challenges us to rethink our models of leadership.
What would a right brain leader look like?
Imagine leaders who prioritized empathy and collaboration
Right.
and had this long-term vision
Yeah.
that considered the well-being of the planet
Okay.
and all the people on it.
So instead of just focusing on, efficiency and profits,
Exactly.
it's about leading with the heart as well as the head.
It is.
Are there any real world examples of this kind of leadership?
That's a good question.
Yep.
Maybe we can explore that a little bit further in part 3.
Okay.
But I think we can all probably think of individuals, even in our own lives,
Right.
who kind of embody some of these qualities.
That's a good point. It's not just about waiting for some grand societal shift. It's about recognizing
Yeah.
and supporting those who are already demonstrating these values.
Absolutely.
What other areas does he highlight?
He also talks about education.
Okay.
He says that our current systems, with their emphasis on rote memorization
All right.
and standardized testing, are way too focused on the left hemisphere.
So instead of drilling facts into kids' heads, we need to be nurturing their creativity,
Hey.
their critical thinking,
Yeah.
and emotional intelligence.
Imagine schools that prioritize collaboration over competition,
Okay.
where children are encouraged to really explore their passions and develop their unique talents.
Okay, that sounds amazing, but also kind of utopian.
It does.
How do we even begin to make those changes?
It's a huge challenge, but I think it starts with recognizing the problem
Yeah.
and having conversations like this one.
Right.
We need to question the assumptions that are driving our current systems and start demanding something different.
So it's not about demonizing the left brain.
No.
It's about ensuring that it's working in service of a greater vision,
Right.
guided by the right hemisphere.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that both hemispheres have valuable roles to play,
They do.
but they need to be in the right relationship to each other.
That's right.
And that goes for individuals as well as societies.
Absolutely.
It sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is.
Are we talking about transforming our entire civilization?
It's a daunting task.
Yeah.
But remember, change starts with each of us.
Okay.
Even small shifts in our own lives can kind of ripple outward.
Right.
If we start valuing empathy over efficiency, connection over control,
Yeah.
maybe we can start to tip the scales
Yep.
one interaction at a time.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
It's not about waiting for some grand revolution.
Right.
It's about making different choices in our own lives right here, right now.
Exactly.
And maybe those individual choices will inspire bigger changes.
I believe so.
I'm feeling a renewed sense of agency after this conversation.
That's great.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by, the scale of the problems
Yeah.
facing our world.
Yeah.
But you're right. Change does start with us.
It does. And you're not alone in this. There are tons of other people who are also striving to live more balanced and meaningful lives.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Good.
Before we wrap up part 2,
Okay.
I just want to acknowledge that some people might find McGilchrist's claims a bit ambitious.
Sure.
I mean, can we really blame all of society's problems on an imbalance in our brains?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely making a bold argument.
Right.
But I think what's valuable is that it challenges us to think differently about how our brains shape our world.
Yeah.
And maybe how we can reshape that world for the better.
So the key takeaway here is we need to kind of wake up to this dominance of the left hemisphere and really actively cultivate the wisdom and balance of the right.
Exactly. And he's offering a roadmap for doing that.
Right.
It's a call to action,
Yeah.
a challenge to reclaim the full potential of our brains and our humanity.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
We'll be right back in part 3 to continue exploring these ideas.
Sounds good.
Don't go anywhere.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into Iain McGilchrist's The Master and His Emissary.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has me thinking about those times, when I feel most alive and connected.
Yeah.
It's usually when I'm doing something that really engages my senses, not when I'm, checking things off my to-do list.
That's a great example of how we can start to recognize
Yeah.
the influence of these two hemispheres.
Right.
When you feel that sense of joy and connection, that's the master shining through.
It makes you wonder, what would a world look like
Right.
where those values were more prominent?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Where empathy and creativity were prioritized,
Right.
not just efficiency and productivity.
That's the big question he wants us to grapple with.
It is.
He paints this picture of a world where our relationship with nature is transformed, where we see it as a source of wonder and inspiration,
Yeah.
not just, resources to be exploited.
And what about leadership?
Yeah, what about leadership?
In this right brain balanced world,
Yeah.
what kind of leaders would we be looking for?
That reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about real world examples of this kind of leadership.
Right.
Did any come to mind as we were talking?
It's interesting when we think about leaders who inspire us.
Yeah.
It often comes down to their ability to connect with people on a deeper level.
Right.
Leaders who can articulate a vision that speaks to our hearts, not just our minds.
So it's about more than just charisma.
It is.
It's about authenticity, integrity, a genuine desire to serve something larger than themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while those qualities might not always be valued in our current systems,
Right.
I think deep down we all long for that kind of leadership.
It makes you wonder what would happen if we started demanding more from our leaders, from our institutions,
Right.
from our culture as a whole,
What if we refuse to settle?
for anything less.
That's a powerful question.
And I think it starts with each of us recognizing our own power to choose differently,
Okay.
to choose connection over competition, empathy over efficiency,
Yeah.
meaning over mindless productivity.
This might sound a bit idealistic,
Yeah.
but I truly believe that even small individual choices can create a ripple effect.
I agree.
Imagine what could happen if millions of people
Right.
started making those choices every single day.
It's not about waiting for some grand revolution.
Right.
It's about shifting the balance one interaction at a time.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired,
Yeah.
what would you say is the first step toward reclaiming the wisdom of their inner master?
I'd say the most important thing is to simply become aware.
Okay.
Start paying attention to those moments when you feel stressed, overwhelmed, disconnected.
Yeah.
Those are often signs that your emissary has taken over.
And then consciously choose to engage
Right.
with activities that nourish your right hemisphere.
Exactly.
Take a walk in nature, listen to some music,
Yeah.
connect with someone you love.
Remind yourself what truly matters.
It's about slowing down,
Right.
tuning in,
Right.
and reconnecting with those parts of ourselves that get pushed aside
Absolutely.
in a world that values speed and efficiency above all else.
If any of our listeners are intrigued by McGilchrist's ideas, I highly recommend checking out The Master and His Emissary.
It's a challenging but ultimately rewarding read.
It is a book that will stay with you
Yeah.
long after you finish it.
It makes you question things that you may have taken for granted.
Right.
And it opens up new possibilities for how we can live and lead.
Well, this has been a truly mind-expanding deep dive.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a renewed sense of hope
Yeah.
for the future.
As you navigate the complexities of your own life, remember to ask yourself,
Okay.
is my emissary running the show? Or am I allowing the wisdom of my master to guide my choices?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with a fresh batch of fascinating ideas to explore.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep those brains buzzing.